I had the opportunity to preach this morning on the lessons for the third Sunday in Lent. In that lessons, it's John's Gospel, and it's the story of Jesus cleansing the temple. And it struck me and it reminded me a little bit of some of the things I had understood from my business career. There was a book by Jim Collins called From Good to Great, and he talked about some corporations that really had moved into a level of greatness and what it took for them to do that. The interesting thing is some of the companies that he identified were Circuit City, Blockbuster, and Fannie Mae. And if you know anything about business, you know these companies are either completely bankrupt or bailed out by somebody else. He then wrote a book after that about how the mighty have fallen and talked about how these institutions, these corporations, really, due to pride, overexpansion, losing sight of where they really needed to go missionally, and just trying to quick fix everything, they really began to fail. And I thought that was really interesting. And as I was thinking about the gospel, I was thinking about Jesus going into the temple, into that whole institutional marketplace that they had for sacrificial animals, and driving all of the money changers and the animals out of the temple and cleansing it. And when they was called to task on it, he seemed to say that the temple could be rebuilt in 3 days. But what he really was saying is that God was doing a new thing. That God was replacing the temple worship with the temple of Jesus' body that would be raised up in 3 days. God was about to do a new thing. Often it's said that you need to defend God like you defend a lion, which is get out of God's way. And I think sometimes as the church, I wonder if we're getting in God's way. The world is changing, and we all know that. The number of people that go to church, the nature of church and society, all of those things are changing around us. And we have to look at how it is that we are the church in this day. And I don't think there are any clear right answers. I wish I could tell you that we have a 4-step plan to make everything perfect. But the reality is we don't. But what we do know is that God is working in new ways. And the Church of Jesus Christ will go on. But the question is, are we helping God? Or are we standing in God's way? God's about to do a new thing. And it's time for us in Lent to think deeply, to listen for God, to listen to one another, to listen to our neighbors, so that we can begin to renew and to move where God wants us to move. So I hope that in this season of Lent we have the opportunity to think deeply about how we are to be the church in a changing world, so that we don't end up to being the Blockbuster of churches.